we're looking at the McDonald South African business deal possibly standing at risk, where Cyril Ramaphosa's Shanduka group faces surprise costs. What exactly are we looking at here? Put it all out on the table for us.
Some years back, about 5 years or so back, the National Treasury introduced a number of tax concessionary provisions. And those concessionary provisions were really geared towards allowing primarily groups of companies to effectively reorganize and restructure themselves in the most commercially efficient manner without tax standing in the way. So these reorganizations were able to be done in a tax neutral fashion. And within these concessionary provisions, there were a number of provisions like amalgamation transactions, unbundling transactions, liquidation transactions, asset for share transactions, and in that is something called an intra-group transaction, which is the very problematic Section 45 at the moment.
Yeah.
What an intra-group transaction does, what Section 45 allows groups of companies to do, and a company within a group of companies is a defined term, and it means a whole bunch of companies which essentially have one corporate common holding company. So all these companies will have one common group holding company which owns 70% of the shares in these group companies, and to the extent that these companies are all within the same group, they are able to shift businesses and assets around between them without any tax problems, without any tax cost.
Between them, though, and this is where
Yes.
the murkiness comes to bear,
Yes,
because many are questioning
Yes.
how the Shanduka group thought they would
Yes.
benefit from this tax in the first place.
Right. Without getting too technical, what happens is this Section 45 allows companies within the same group to transfer businesses and assets between them, free of VAT, free of transfer taxes, free of income taxes at the conclusion of the transaction. Now, what National Treasury is concerned about is National Treasury is saying that people are using the provisions of Section 45, and I'll go into a little bit of detail about that, to convert interest on debt, which is not tax deductible, to convert that into deductible interest. So in other words, to take a debt, for example, to acquire shares in a company, which is so-called non-productive debt. You can't get an interest deduction on debt that you raise to buy shares in a company. What you do is you do, through the mechanism of Section 45, you take that debt which was used to acquire shares in a company, and you effectively repay that debt using a debt into another group company, which then buys the businesses and assets out of the target company.
Yeah.
And that debt becomes productive debt, and you can get an interest deduction. It's without the use of a diagram and getting overly technical. That's about the simplest way I can explain
And
it.
that's hard to believe, that's the simplest without the use of a diagram. Let's move on, because the question is then, when was this suspended, and
Yes.
why has it come as such a surprise for the players involved?
Yes.
Surely they should have been cognizant of
Right.
the cost that they would incur down the line.
Well, it hasn't yet been. Well, it's still a bill. It's not law yet. It's still in the process of debate. But the bill has said that they intend to suspend it with effect from 1 June.
Okay.
Now, the problem with the problematic issue surrounding this is that you can't just change the rules midstream. You can't travel down the road and then say, oh, by the way, yesterday that sign that said you had to go 60 kilometers an hour, it's actually, we changed it today with effect from yesterday, that it's 40 kilometers an hour. So with transactions like McDonald's, like the Phalaborwa transaction, the Mustek transaction, these deals have been negotiated and structured over months.
Yeah.
And they've been doing it in terms of the law as it stood at that time. Now, the big fuss is because this announcement jeopardizes all those deals, because certain contracts have been drawn up, understandings have been done, funding has been raised on particular terms, and suddenly, overnight, you've been told, well, actually, the speed limit is actually 40 kilometers an hour, not 60 kilometers.
Bottom line, how do you see this all playing out?
What will happen is, obviously, there's going to be a lot of discussion, a lot of debate. I think the best way is, number one, If they are dead set on postponing Section 45, then at least give a 12-month period to say we're about to suspend it. You've got 6 months, 8 months, 12 months in which to do it. But more preferably, instead of suspending Section 45, they should use the existing powers that they have got. If they believe that there's an avoidance issue, not an evasion issue, an avoidance issue, then utilize the very, very strong avoidance provisions that they already have in the Act. Use that to combat the problem, not throw the baby out with the bathwater.